thank you for joining us. Mark, thank you for introducing us to Rita, and I'm going to turn it over to the two of you.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Jim. And I'd like to welcome Rita Horton to the Consciousness Cafe and speaking to us tonight about healing. A lot of people are interested in healing and the different healing modalities. And Rita, you're specialized in healing touch. I wanted to start out with, how did you get involved with it? And what was your motivation for becoming a healer?
Well, in 2010, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And 6 months prior to that, I had rotator cuff surgery. Never been sick, never been in the hospital. So after my breast cancer diagnosis, I went through surgery and went back to work and got a call. And the surgeon told me that my cancer had metastasized and I'd have to have another surgery. So 30 days later, I'm having another surgery. Meanwhile, I'm teaching. I'm a real estate instructor by trade, and finished the second surgery and then had to go through 8 weeks of radiation. So going through the rotator cuff, breast cancer, lymph node cancer, radiation, it makes you take a really hard look at life and say, am I happy with what I'm doing? You know, if I was to die tomorrow, would this be all that there is? And it made me reevaluate my life of what I really wanted to do. And I had been in real estate at that point in time, almost 38 years. And the last 10 of it was teaching, and which I loved, but it took a lot of time, a lot of energy. I was on call. It was probably between a 50 and a 70-hour week because we had to do things within the company. And I made the decision that I was going to do a life change. And for the next 2 years, we got the house ready to sell. I gave away furniture, clothes, and we downsized and went from a 3,800 square foot house to a 2-bedroom condo in uptown Charlotte. I didn't quit my job until a year later. And that's when I decided that, okay, this is it. I was out of work 6 weeks, and my oncologist called me and said, I'm doing an integrative medicine symposium. Would you like to come? He said, most of the people there are going to be doctors and nurses and radiologists. I said, I'd love to. So I went to the symposium, and the last person to get up and speak was the RN that taught Healing Touch.
Oh, wow. And
I went up to her and I said, your speech just spoke to my heart. Can I take your class? I said, I'm not a medical professional. She said, you pay, you can come. I said, okay, give me the website. And that's how I started. So I had already quit my job before I even knew about Healing Touch.
Wow. And your job was a very responsible one too. I mean, you were up in management as well, right? And had been in banking for a long time.
Well, I had been in banking 7 years before going into real estate, and I'd been in real estate 35. And I was the executive director of professional development, which that wonderful title meant I trained all the new agents that came to work for our company statewide in North and South Carolina. And I opened a pre-licensing school and I did their recruiting. So it took a lot of time and effort with doing basically 3 jobs.
Yeah. And so this was a significant change for you, and you actually made a very decisive decision to change into healing, it seems like.
You know, and I felt like I was led to it. After going through all those health issues in a very short period of time, I had never been sick my entire life. And in 6 months, I had 3 surgeries, radiation, and it was just turned my life, my world upside down. But I felt it was just a message to me saying, you need to get out of what you're doing. And when I quit, I said, what am I going to do? I've always been busy. I've always had a career. And then 2 months later, this happened.
Wow. And how long did you spend in training to become a practitioner?
Healing Touch has 5 levels of training. And I spread it out over 4 years because what I wanted to do was take each level of training and with what I've learned in each class, practice. And we moved to uptown Charlotte, which we were probably the old people. Mostly, it was mostly kids and bankers that lived uptown that were millennials. And after I finished my first class, I went to all my neighbors in the condos and I said, I'm learning a new technique on healing. It'll help with stress. If you'll come to the house, I won't charge you. Just let me practice on you. And that's how I started. So I would practice on all these young kids that lived in my area. And
Wow.
it worked out. So I was able to see many people.
Well, that's great, because one of the questions I was going to ask is how did you get over the fear and intrepidation, or just the reluctance to come out as a healing professional? But it seems like it was just natural the way you did it. And that's a wonderful way of going about it, especially when you get started.
Once I finished that first level of training, the instructor that I had was fabulous. And I learned, because we practiced on each other. This was pre-COVID. After we learned a technique, we were put on the massage table and we worked on each other. And I found that when I put my hands over their body, and they teach you to put them on the body, but I felt energy above the body. I was able to feel their health issues, where they stressed, where they had pain. And I would look at them and say, do your knees hurt you? I feel a congestion in your stomach if you have digestive issues. And it just came natural. I think that made it a whole lot easier to give me the confidence to go out and practice on people that lived around me.
Well, that's good. And you actually worked on me once, and I can testify she's got some strong energy going. So it's really interesting what you've done. And really the modalities and healing touch, they're really a set of modalities, and it's something different from Reiki or Qigong or some of these other energy practices or techniques. Could you describe that a little bit?
Yeah, healing touch was developed by Janet Metkin, who was a holistic nurse in a hospital in Colorado. And working in the hospital setting, she felt that they were curing the disease or the illness, but they weren't healing the mind, body, and spirit of that person. So the total person wasn't healing, just that one issue they came into the hospital for. And she developed this program, and it's 5 levels of training on working with the energy field. And it's many different techniques. I know with Reiki, there's not as many. They do the same thing. It's energy based, but we have a technique for different illnesses, cancer. I have a technique for pulling anesthesia out of someone after surgery. We have a pain drain. We have a mind clearing to help with stress. So there's lots of different techniques that we've learned and practiced in class to help with different ailments. So it's not just, feeling the energy and moving the energy. It's being very specific on a particular part of the body.
Wow. And when you were doing your practicing with the people in your development, how many different modalities were you using, or were you trying out things on people as they would come in?
Every time I learned something new, I would try it out with someone. And one of the best there's a technique that you use to find out where someone has pain that's been stuck in their body. And the young man that lived in the condo in front of me always wanted to be a professional baseball player. And I worked on him, and you start at the ankle to the knee to the hip, and you work throughout the body. And every place I touched on him, he had some baseball injury. He had got hit with the ball. He broke his ankle. He had got hit in the forehead and had 6 stitches. And I said to him, you know why you're not playing pro ball? I said, you'd never survive. You would never. So that was one of the ones, but a lot of stress, a lot of back issues where people, have a lot of back pain, a lot of shoulder pain, which I feel like people are carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders, moving that away. Everyone carries their stress in a different place. And I think stress is a big indicator of a lot of illnesses. But what I did learn doing all of this was that our mind and our thoughts control our body. So our thoughts will control that different parts of the body. And I found that to be true of what they worried about or what they stressed about reflected in their body somewhere.
Now, the lady who created Healing Touch was an RN. And I was going through your website, preparing for the interview. And she was saying, or maybe some of the other people in the videos that I watched were saying that it helped them get more in touch with the people, the patients that they were seeing. And it was more than just a rote, hello, how are you? I'm your nurse. It was getting involved in their lives and actually making a connection and adding that area or that aspect of treatment to them while they were in the hospital.
And it is very personal. And when you start your healing touch session, you ground and center and then you attune to the patient or client. And when you attune to their energy field, you're able to feel the energy with your hands. And I truly believe everyone's got the ability to do this. All they need is training and an open heart. I really believe that if they come from heart-centered and their main focus is to help and heal someone, they can do it. I truly believe that.
So
Because
I was going to say, so would you consider encouraging someone who had like a loved one or a parent who was in pain or had some illness or disability to consider taking Healing Touch?
oh, I think it would be a great class. And even the level 1 class covers so many different techniques. And one of them is for pain drain. And you can do this on yourself too. It's not just, doing it on others. It can be done on yourself to balance the energies. And the theory behind Healing Touch is to balance the energy in the body so the energy is flowing and the body can self-heal.
Mm. So you're not doing the healing. It's really the person that your patient is doing the healing.
Yeah, well, before I started Healing Touch session, I ground in center and I asked God to be with me. I asked the archangels coming from that Catholic background when we're talking about the Italian background. Coming from that Catholic background, I have seen archangels my entire life since childhood. I asked them to be with me. I asked their spirit guides and my spirit guides and guardian angels to be with me to facilitate the healing. I'm just a facilitator.
There you go.
And it just comes through me.
That's good. So you're doing work in the hospitals now as part of your Healing Touch practice. And I think that's kind of interesting too, because there's a lot of healers who have a private practice and you have a private practice as well, but you're actually being recommended by doctors and nurses to help people with post-operative and preoperative surgical procedures.
I've been very fortunate because once I finished my level 1 training, and really that doesn't prepare you to do anything, I offered to volunteer at a nonprofit breast cancer facility. And for the next 7 years, I saw over 400 women. And those that I saw them before surgery. And I said to them, I will come into the hospital if your surgeon will approve me to come into post-op or recovery. And I've never had any of the surgeons tell me no. So as soon as surgery was done, I'd be waiting in post-op. They'd roll them out, and I would do, I call magnetic clearing, pulling anesthesia out of their system. Sometimes it would take a half an hour. Sometimes it would take an hour, depending on the length of the surgeries. I would not leave until they were face-to-face talking to me. And it just blew these surgeons away because they would come into post-op and they'd leave me and they'd come back and they'd be awake. Fully conscious, not groggy, but fully conscious. So I had a lot of the plastic surgeons that did reconstructive surgery and a lot of the breast cancer surgeons that did mastectomies and deep flap reconstruction call me and say, can you see this patient of mine before surgery? And then I would go see them the day before. I'd go to post-op, and then I'd go back to the hospital the day after surgery and work on their pain, because I pulled all the anesthesia out. So I'd work on the pain drain. And if they needed me after that, once they got home, I would sometimes go to their house, or if they were able, they'd come to my office.
Now, talking about the anesthesia, the women who were in these surgeries, they were in for 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9 hours. It wasn't like just a minor procedure. This was significant stuff. So for your work, it was very important, I guess, for them in being able to come out of it much faster.
Most of the people that I worked with had the fear of waking up out of anesthesia with that severe headache where you could barely see, or the nauseousness that hit you after, the anesthesia went to the stomach. And if I could get to them before they actually became conscious, I could rake it out of their system, out of their energy field. Mm. So it was almost like a joke, because the doctors don't understand the thing I do. I've tried to explain it. I've given them brochures. They say, we don't care. As long as it works, that's all we care about. So we'll let you come as long as we can see the results. And they did. And I did that for 5 years. Now, then COVID hit and nobody got in. Right. So I'll probably start back in a couple of months when they're starting to, now there's just now starting to let some visitors in the hospital. So it's still tough to get in there.
Yeah. And these doctors had done studies too, as well, to document the change that happened as a result of using Healing Touch. And both you as well as Healing Touch as an organization has had these studies done.
Yeah, there's been several clinical trials done, but the biggest one that's been done in Charlotte, which puts a smile on my face, is with Levine Cancer Institute. And that's who I volunteered with, and that's who I went through for treatment for myself. And they have an integrative department where they have healing touch, acupuncture, massage, psychology, visualization, spiritualization, art, doing art, journaling. They know that you have to heal that whole person. So cancer doctors are way ahead of the regular medical field. They know that you need those other integrative things to heal that full person, that mind, body, and spirit. So they have been very supportive of me. And the clinical trials that were done proved that the people going through surgery require less pain medicine after surgery. Their recuperation time is quicker, and they're anesthesia with no side effects. So they've done clinical trials on that just to show it.
So talking about the pain management, when you would come in the next day after the operation and do your work, what were some of the results that were seen after that?
Usually when I go to the patient's room, I will balance their energies first, just to get the energy flowing. And then I have something called a pain drain, where I put my hand wherever the pain is and my other hand out, taking it out. And then I switch hands and ask for divine light to come in to help with the pain. And when I leave, they're not in pain. They are not in pain. And it lasts a pretty good while. You know, of course, it might be 6 or 7 hours, but it reduces the amount of narcotics that they have to take. And that was the biggie with most of these patients. They said, I don't want to get hooked on oxycodone or any hydrocodone. They said, I just want to be able to try to do it naturally if I can to deal with pain. And some of the surgeries these women went through were awful. I mean, so long, so invasive, that most of them, unless they had something besides pain medicine, had a hard time with it.
And you went in before the operations as well sometimes with people, I guess, to calm them down and to help them.
I do what I call a mind clearing. And it's a technique that we work on the mind, and it reduces the stress, and it takes away anxiety, and it puts them in a better place. And I always have them breathe before I always start on them. So they always I have them go through the breathing. I tell them, you know, if your mind starts to wander as I'm working on you, go back to your breathing, because it'll bring you back to this time and place. But yeah, I worked on their minds just to kind of relax them.
What's one person's experience that you recall, you know, that was significant, if there was something?
And we talked about that. And I started going back because I've seen over 500, 600 patients or clients. Yeah. But when I first got started and I worked on that neighbor, that young man that had all those baseball injuries, he was seeing a psychologist before I started working on him. And he said, she's got lung cancer. And they've told her that they're stopping all treatment to get her affairs in order. He said, would you see her? I said, sure. So I called her up and I said, are you open to it? I said, you know, I don't want to waste your time if you're not going to be receptive, or just all I keep asking is keep an open mind and open heart. That's it. That's all So once a week, I would put my massage table in the back of my car. I'd drive over, I'd set it up, put my music on. And I worked on her probably for 6 months, about once a week. And it was more talking a lot of time. But I worked on her pain, because the lung cancer was very painful for her. And she was having a lot of emotional things going on with her children who were grown. And after 6 months, I tried to call her for another appointment. She never called me back. So I couldn't get her. And I called one of her friends and I said, what is up? She said, I'll have her call you. So she called me and she said, I just want you to sit down. I said, okay. She said, I went back to the oncologist because I was due to go in, and he looked at me and they did a new scan and they said, your lung cancer has shrunk to the point where it's very minute and you can start radiation again. And that was my, okay, I can do this. Because I'd only been out of class like 2-3 months, the first level.
Wow.
And I worked, and it was just having someone that was open to what I was doing. And I just came from my heart and wanted to, and I just asked God to help heal her. So she went through radiation, and it burned her because she was like red hair, white skin, blue eye. And she called me and she goes, I can't do this anymore. She goes, I'm done. I said, okay, it's your decision. And in 3 months, she was gone.
Mm.
But I had known what I did for her made a difference during that time.
Wow. Wow. That's a good story, especially when you're starting out, because that gives you a lot of confidence to continue on. And I think that's one of the important things as you're getting started in publicly practicing.
The confidence came really with class and then doing all the practicing and getting the response from people. But after working with, her name was Evelyn, that said, okay, I want to learn more. I want to do more. Mm-hmm. And I started volunteering for cancer fairs, Heal the Healer Day at the hospital. Anytime I could go out and work on someone or help volunteer, I did it. And that's what I did for the first 4 years.
Wow. And you're working at the Levine Cancer Center, but you're also doing some work with Novant here in Charlotte as well?
Yeah. The integrative doctor at Novant, Dr. Russ Greenfield, has a team, and they haven't come up with the budget to pay me yet. So he sends his clients directly to me. So they pay me. So he's been sending me, and it's all cancer patients and all different kinds of cancer. It's not just breast cancer. It's a wide variety. And that has worked out really well with him. Levine has put someone on staff and to do Healing Touch part-time because they're funded by a different organization than Novant is. So both of them have given me referrals, wow, which I'm very grateful for.
Wow. Now, how many Healing Touch practitioners are in Charlotte? Is it a big group or a small group, or?
No, I would probably say there's about 70. Not all of us are doing this as an occupation or as a living. A lot of them were nurses. I would say 90% of the people that were in my class and that are part of our chapter here in Charlotte were nurses. Some of them, one of them is working part-time for Levine in Pineville, which is like a bedroom community to Charlotte. But a lot of them have other full-time jobs. So I'm really the only one that has stepped out and got into private practice so far. Wow. But it's a great group. I mean, we're all like-minded. We all come from heart-centered. And I've done the Zoom meeting since the first of the year, since COVID kept us quarantined, to keep us together. And now that they're lifting a lot of the requirements, we're going to meet again once a month, and we work on each other. Mm. You know, we evaluate each other to see where you need healing, and then we do a healing touch session on each other.
And that's good practice too. Mm-hmm. Talking about practice, your private practice, what do you do in addition to seeing cancer patients?
I have a wider range of clients. Anyone from someone who's had back surgery 2 or 3 times. I've had someone who had thyroid cancer. I had someone who had a broken leg that never healed. I think I'd mentioned to you, I had a friend that had to have the muscles replaced in her ankle to the bottom of her foot. Yeah. And they cut her calf open to take the muscles and put them in the bottom. And she developed lymphedema where they took it out. And there's a technique called a lymphatic drain that I worked on her. And I probably saw her 4 or 5 times. And Easter morning, she sends me a text with a picture where she can get her foot in a heel. Wow. So she said, this made my day, and I believe in healing touch. I said, could you wear heels? She said, yep. She couldn't even get shoes on. She had to wear flip-flops. Wow. So it's a wider range. Everyone comes for a different reason. A lot of it's stress and anxiety. A lot of digestive issues. Hip, I have a few MS patients or clients that come to see me to work on the joints. A lot of people who've had surgery that didn't do rehab, like for knees, shoulders, and hips, have some really excruciating pain because they can't get the use back of the joint. So I work on that. I had someone who had back surgery and the incision didn't heal. And they put a vac on this incision to try to drain it, to close it. I don't know if you've ever seen one of those.
No, I haven't. Could you
You know,
describe
not
it?
coming from the medical professional, everything was a learning experience. And I worked on her for once a week for about a month, and her incision closed.
Wow.
And the doctor couldn't believe it. So it's a wide range. It works. It really works for everything. And I think one of the questions you'd asked me prior was, is there something that it's not good at? And I would say no, because as long as the energy is flowing in the body will heal. It will heal. And it's just keeping that body, the energy moving.
Yeah. Now, Healing Touch started in the U.S. I believe out in Colorado is where the lady was that started it, but it's in other countries in the world now too.
It's worldwide. It really is worldwide. Our network is pretty much in the States, but if we have someone that is moving to England or France or any place in the world, there's a Healing Touch chapter there. So it's really gone worldwide in the short amount of time, because she started this in 1992, which really isn't that long when you think that Reiki has been around since 1922. And then really the biggest difference, we both use energy, is that Reiki was strictly in Eastern medicine, when it was developed by the monk. And when a nurse developed it, it was geared toward Western medicine. And it was really geared for medical professionals working in a hospital environment. That's what it was originally set up for, to teach trained nurses and radiologists and anyone that dealt with the patient to help work with their pain. So it's come full circle.
That's great. Now, talk about your family and extended family and, cousins, relatives. What do they think of your work?
Well, I'm originally from New York, but moved to Charlotte right out of school.
Yeah.
So all my family was still left in New York. My brother and my sister moved to Charlotte in the mid 80s. And my parents, we bought them a condo here in the late 80s. And then they went to Southern New York, which is Florida. They moved down there. And I've worked on my brother and my sister. I've worked on my niece. I've worked on my grandson, my granddaughter,
Oh, wow.
my daughter, and my husband has 5 sisters, and I've worked on 2 of his sisters.
Oh, wow.
So, you can try to explain it to someone, but it's really better giving a session to let them know what they're going to feel, because it's hard for them to understand energy moving or what they feel from my hands. And usually they feel heat from my hands. If they feel cold, that means I'm taking energy out. Heat is energy going in. You asking me if it was pull or push, but that's probably something similar. But most of the time I can feel the energy coming from my hands to the person. And before I start, I scan their body. I have them on a massage table and I scan them from head to toe. And I can tell which part of the body is congested, where I need to work. And a lot of times I'll, in my mind's eye, get a picture of what the health issue is. Mm-hmm. I've always been a little bit intuitive from childhood, and this has just heightened my intuitiveness as far as being a healer. So sometimes I hear it, sometimes I see it, sometimes I feel it. I always feel it with my hands. So I'm able to concentrate on different parts of the body. Always balance them first and then go back to that part of the body that has a problem.
And I think it's good that you encourage your family and relatives to experience it rather than just talk to them about it, because I think you're right in that this is experiential. And that's the best way to explain what's going on, is just to feel it, see it, taste it, touch it, and get the results. But I wondered, in all these years that you've been practicing, has your practicing of healing touch and then working with your intuition, has that actually helped your energy and helped your intuitive abilities?
I think once I felt very comfortable doing healing touch after my first level and practicing on all the kids that lived in my neighborhood, I had the confidence, and I would just ask for the guidance, and it usually just came to me. So I can actually feel, before I put my hands on the client, the energy coming out of my hands. The intuitiveness has just made me be able to see it clearer, where there's a health issue. And in healing touch, they teach you never diagnose.
Mm.
So never tell them you have this wrong or you have that wrong. So what I do is go in, balance, and send energy to that part of the body that needs healing.
Yeah, that's good. And I should have mentioned this earlier, but this healing touch is complementary medicine. It's not actual AMA medical doctor medicine, and you're not licensed and all like this. But you actually say that in your documentation, you know, to make sure that everyone knows that you're doing complementary work as opposed to practice or practitioner work. I know that's the wrong word, but just talk a little bit about that if that's okay.
I have a consent form because before we start, I explain to them what I do, and I let them know I'm not a medical professional. I'm not a nurse. I'm not a doctor. I've just been trained to be able to feel energy with my hands. I'm kinesthetic, so I will know where your energy is congested, and that I can't guarantee results. And I think that was the hardest lesson I had to learn. And they teach us this from the first class, that you can't control the outcome.
Mm.
Sometimes there's other factors, no matter whatever you're doing, that's going to affect that health issue, that you're not going to be able to change it. Because of course you want to heal everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So I tell them the one thing I can guarantee is when you leave here, you're going to be relaxed, your mind is going to be clear, and you're going to feel a new feeling in the body where you're going to feel more balanced and lighter. And that's always the case.
Yeah.
But my clients will have a wider range of experiences. Some will experience heat, some will cold, sometimes movements. A lot of times they'll see colors. And to me, the colors represent different chakras or the energy centers, and even the angels. Some people feel like they've been lifted off the table because they're so light. So it's been different for everybody. Even though I use the same techniques and I come with the same intention for each person to have their highest and best good, everyone's going to experience something different.
That's good.
And it's probably what they need at the time.
Yes, and that's a very good point. It's what they needed right at that point. Have you ever had your energy measured, the healing energy coming from your hands?
I have, and I was probably just finished my second level of training, and they did the Healing Touch conference in Charlotte that year. So I went, and there was a woman who was a scientist and a PhD that had all these long tests as far as putting probes on your finger, hands in water. The one thing we had to do is change the pH of water in a canister with just our hands. She wanted to see how intuitive we were. If we had to look at her and tell her what was wrong with her. So I just started at the head and went to the toe, and she kept going, stop. No, I don't want to know anymore. But yeah, it was measured scientifically and she said that definitely my energy level is much higher, and I'm able to conduct energy with my hands.
Oh, that's cool. So what did you think having the Healing Touch conference in Charlotte? Was that an interesting experience with it coming to you instead of you having to go to it?
Yeah, it was wonderful. All the guest speakers were fabulous, and it was everyone that was involved in energy in some way, and each one brought a different trait and teaching to the group. So it was absolutely fabulous. They had someone who did, a room where they had all the merchants and vendors selling different things, and they were doing your auras and stuff like that. So it was a lot of fun, but it was a great learning experience for me, and I didn't have to travel.
That's cool. And there were people from other parts of the world that came in too, as well.
All over the country. The furthest one in the States was Seattle, Washington, and I think someone came in from England. And they were all, I would say 80-90% of them were nurses. They were nurses prior to going into healing energy. Mm. A lot of the nurses find out about this is because Healing Touch is offered as continuing education for nurses and medical professionals. So that's how they learn about it to start. And then once they go through the first class, most of them are hooked to take the second and third all the way to get certified.
Wow. So do you think that has some impact on its acceptance in the medical community?
I think it does. The actual, what I call the medical field, like the typical hospitals, I still go in to see people after surgery, in post-op with, of course, the approval of their surgeon. But a lot of doctors just don't get it. They don't understand it. And no matter how you explain it to them, it like goes right over their head. And I said, it's quantum physics. Everything has energy in life. I said, everything is made of energy. I just found out I can feel it with my hands. That's the only difference. I was trying to make it as simple as possible. And they said, if it works, that's fine. But I see in 5 years, every hospital is going to have a healing touch practitioner or some kind of energy healer. It doesn't have to be, it could be Reiki, it could be any kind of healing, every floor in the hospital. I think they're going to be in post-op. I think you're going to see more and more in post-op because a lot of these doctors are realizing, they're curing a disease, but they're not healing the person. Mm-hmm. And that's for life, especially with cancer patients. Cancer doctors have it down. They understand it, they know it, and they know it works. The regular medical profession is going to take a little bit of time. But the more and more they see you in post-op and the more they see you in getting this patient ready to take to surgery, I think the more visible we're going to be, and they're going to see the need. And they're going to see how it works, because it does work. And it's non-toxic. There's no medicine. You have no hangover. It's strictly heart, intention, and hands. And why would a medical professional not want to have someone come in and do that kind of healing that's beneficial to the patient, that doesn't cost doesn't cost medically wise anything from drugs, shots, or anything like that.
Yeah. And I think that's a great view to the future. And with that, I'd like to ask you one more question, and then we'll open the floor up for questions. How could someone who's interested in what you're talking about get involved with Healing Touch and actually take courses? What should they do to learn more about it?
We have a wonderful website called Healing Touch Program, and they can click on it, and and it has all 50 states listed. They could click on their state, their city, and it will tell them where the courses are available. So it's very simple to find. In our Charlotte market, AHAC, which offers all the education for medical professionals, offers Healing Touch now.
Wow.
So it's offered throughout the entire country, just going to their website.
That's cool. Jim? You're on mute.
You're on mute.
That was fascinating, Rita. I sat here, and as you were going by, I came up with a list of 8 questions.
Oh, good.
And I'm going to get started, but I want people to feel free to submit questions via the chat at the bottom of your screen, or you can raise your hand. If you call up the participants list, you can find a little button at the bottom to raise your hand, and I'll call on people. Have you ever heard of Bill Bankston?
Yes. I had to read his book to get certified.
Okay. Well, are you aware that he's working with trying to impart whatever healing mechanism, trying to impart it into water and cotton?
No, I was not aware of that.
Be very interested in whether you'd be open to trying this. If you were to visit a client and you scanned their body and you determined where the need was, you could do your own healing touch in that session, but then could you also apply your technique to some cotton, for example, and give it to that client and tell them to take that cotton if they start experiencing pain again, and just put the cotton on there wherever the place is that's experiencing that pain.
I'd be open to it. I don't have a closed mind. I'm always trying to take, more courses to learn more about any kind of energy healing. So sure, has he written another book besides The Energy Cure?
You could go to his website and read more about it. You could also go to the Rhine Center, if you're not a member there, and watch one of his videos. But he's very much into researching energy healing, and his hope is that someday he'll be able to bring this imagine if you could just take water, it doesn't cost anything, and you could impart healing energy into it and give that to people. What a boon that would be to the medical community.
Oh, sure.
So
I'd be very open to that.
now another question. It's, you've got all these doctors who call on you to come in and do your work in post-op situations. Actually, you get started with the patient before their surgery and you follow through. I was involved in anesthesia for a while, not on the management side, so I'm a little familiar with what goes on in the operating rooms. I'm wondering why these physician practices don't hire their own healing touch practitioners. It's like there's some of them, I guess they're physical therapy. When I went in and had a hip replaced, the doctor put me in touch with a physical therapist. But why not just employ a healing touch or Reiki or some form of practitioner and make that part of, I guess they don't have a way of collecting for it through the traditional reimbursement system. And maybe that's a reluctance.
That's the biggest problem. Insurance companies now are starting to pay for acupuncture and massage, but only a portion. They have not approved energy medicine or energy healing. When that changes, it'll open up everything for them. That's why they're referring to me, because they can't afford to put me on staff. There's not enough money, especially in a very large practice. And that's why they're sending them directly to me instead of through the office. But I think once insurance agrees to start paying for healing, energy healing, it'll be a whole game changer.
Yeah, I was encouraged by your comment that you think in 4 or 5 years, hospitals are going to be much more engaged in this type of thing.
Yeah.
Before I turn over to another person who wants to pose a question, I'd like to reach out to you privately and connect you with Jose Hernandez.
Okay.
Jose uses art as a healing mechanism. And we are exploring, are there ways that we can augment his art with other forms of healing? And I'd like to at least explore that concept with you and Jose and see if there's, particularly if you could figure out a way to impart your healing into cotton. Jose's got some hospitals that he's beginning to work with, and one of them is a children's hospital associated with Johns Hopkins, which does a lot of research. I'd love to, as long as we've got a door opening to Johns Hopkins, if there was a way to somehow incorporate healing touch into a study. Jose's art is going to be going, if they get this all put together, his art will go into this hospital, and they were going to do a controlled study to see the patients who are exposed to his art, what outcomes do they have versus the patients who aren't exposed. It seems like it'd be interesting to try to incorporate some kind of study in your healing touch work.
That sounds wonderful. I can put in the chat my email, or if you want me just to talk with you after.
Well, I'll get that from Mark. And
Perfect.
Bill Lenfesty, it doesn't surprise me you've got your hand raised. Why don't you go ahead, Bill, pose your question.
Okay, thanks. I got about three questions or so. First, with the lady that you were talking about that had lung cancer, if she had continued with your the sessions, is it possible that she could have continued to improve? I was a little confused as to what happened.
Yes. Yes, she
If
would
was
have.
dependent on radiation, or what? If she was dependent
What
on
happened
radiation,
was she healed to the point where her cancer was very minute. And the radiation, she had been through so much treatment prior. When she went through the radiation again this time and it burned her, she said, all right, I'm done. I've had it. I've had a good life. And she let go. She just said, I don't want any more treatment. But I truly believe if she would have let me to continue to work on it, she would have been much better.
have you ever seen reversals and other stuff? Like I've got, for example, a wife with like degenerative bone disease, and so it's one of those things that's progressive and it never gets any better and just keeps deteriorating. For conditions that are progressive, or people like progressive eye diseases or anything that's progressive, have you seen reversals in those kind of things?
Yes. I do volunteer work at a church where we work on parishioners once a month. And one of the men that I worked on consistently had a detached retina. And I said to him, once a month's not going to get it. I said, come to my office once a week and we'll work on it. And I worked on him, I guess it was about 6 weeks, and he went back to the eye doctor and it was fine. It wasn't detached any longer. So it does work. A lot of it, to me, the client has to be open and want the healing, because what I've learned in time is that some people don't want to get better. And that's really hard for me to understand. But they feel like, okay, I'm going to try this and see if it'll help with anxiety, but they truly don't want to get any better. Degenerative bone disease, which is arthritis or osteoarthritis, I can help with the symptoms. I haven't worked on anyone consistently. I work on MS patients for the joints to alleviate the pain, but I haven't turned it completely around. I haven't worked on anyone long enough to turn it completely around. And then COVID hit, and I started doing all my sessions remotely, which was quite an experience too.
Is that more difficult? Yeah, is that more difficult because it's like more removed from
believe it or not, no. The people that I worked on, if I didn't know them, I said, do me a favor, take a selfie and send it to me. So at least I have your face and I can see what you look like. And I just lay out pillows on the bed and work on the body, and I see their face in my mind. And the ironic thing is that everyone I've done this with over the past year tells me they can feel where I'm at on their body. They can feel when my hands are at the knees. I have one lady I see every 3 weeks remotely because she's in Florida, and she said, I know when you stop. I said, there's no fooling you, is there? But she can tell the energy moving or what's happening, because I said to her, don't tell me what's wrong with you this week. I said, I'll tell you when I get done, what I found. Tell me how you're feeling. But it worked out great doing remote healings. It really has.
If you didn't have that point of reference that was the picture of the face, would that mess you up?
Usually, not really. It's all done by intention, and my intention is for this other person. It makes it easier for me because I'm very visual. That's just my personality. So I like to see someone's face, before I work on them. I had a case where a friend of mine had a nephew that was doing military maneuvers in California, and a tank fell over on him. And he broke every bone in his body, his legs, his hips, his pelvis, cracked his face, broke his eye sockets. And I said to her, send me a picture of what he looked like before, and send me a picture of him in the hospital bed. And I worked on him like every 5 days. And that normally don't work on that often. And he was out of ICU in 4 days. So, and I was new. I mean, when I first started, I had no fear. I just figured this is going to work, and this is my intention, and this is what my heart is saying. And I just worked on them. And doing remote healings definitely works. You don't have to be face to face with someone.
Yeah, I'll echo that, Bill. I know it's difficult for those of us.
And one final question, and this is more. Yeah, one final question, and then I'll. Sorry it takes so long. With you were mentioning that you could sometimes, or some of the people that you have, see colors.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, I guess, just the auras or the energy levels or the energy quality that you're seeing. And that intrigues me because I'm totally blind. And so I don't have a color reference. My theory is that the visual cortex has been, that I'm not using, has been used to develop the ability to tell better dad jokes. But is there a way to perceive colors without having the visual reference or the visual experience, or has anybody ever told you that that happens? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Everyone
And
when I
there's
work
no,
on
yeah,
when I work on someone, their eyes are closed. So their eyes aren't open to start with, and they see it through the eye. So it's not, but they know what colors are what, so they say, well, I see a white light, I see a gold light, I see a blue light. But have you ever had sight?
no.
You were born blind. Okay.
Yep.
So it might be a different experience for you, and it
I
might
just think it's
be,
kind of, I just want to know how it works, because I don't care, but I just wonder what would happen. So ponder on that for a while, and I'll may get back to you. I just
get
think it's
my
kind of
email.
interesting.
Get my email and I'll do a remote healing. You're not in Charlotte,
Okay.
are you?
I'm in Greensboro, but I grew up near Freedom Park.
Okay.
So
Dilworth.
yeah, in Dilworth. But I just think it's interesting to know. It's kind of like, how does that work? So I do be kind of interesting to see how it goes. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
One of the challenges, Bill, is these things are kind of outside the scope of a materialist way of perceiving the world. I remember having a healing session many years ago, remotely. The woman, I told her I wanted to have some work done on my hip, but and it was over the phone. She told me to lie down in the bed, and she started remotely reviewing my body. And she said, I see your right ankle has had some trauma at one time. And sure enough, I played soccer in college and I had a bad ankle sprain at that time. So I only bring that up to let you know that these perceptual and healing abilities, to a materialist way of thinking, you'd think you'd have to be present, that there has to be a physical connection somehow. But the distance is not something that's relevant in this arena.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
We got a question from Cynthia. Have you worked with anyone who has Parkinson's?
No, I have not. I've had other neurological issues with some people, but no one with Parkinson's. I've worked with children with ADHD, and that have trouble, a little bit like high functioning autism in children. So I've worked on that, which has definitely helped and made the situation better, but no one with Parkinson's. And that's neurological. So I would think that it would be the same kind of techniques that I would use for that also.
Well, you've worked with MS patients.
I am.
So
another autoimmune.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My wife has MS. Can you talk a little bit about what kind of success you've had with MS?
The MS treatments that I've done is really using laser to break up the congestion in all the joints. And I've relieved a lot of the pain in the shoulders, knees, and hips with a lot of my patients, where they're able to get up and walk and they don't feel like they need a cane or a walker. It's definitely helped loosen up the limbs and the joints. Also, clearing the mind too, because your thoughts play such a huge role in your health, whether it's causing good health or bad health, and it's changing their train of thought of, well, every doctor said this is it. I've got to take a pill. I can't, function unless I do that. And I said, that's Western medicine. Mm-hmm. I said, just keep an open mind. What's the worst that could happen? I only use my hands. That's it. Just my hands and my intention. Yeah. So everyone's been open that I've seen. They really have. So it's been a wonderful experience for me.
So here's another potential avenue for applying your skills. Parkinson's question brought this to mind. There is a business in Greensboro, a flotation business. You're familiar with the dense saltwater baths in an environment. A woman who had some significant problems with, I guess it wasn't Parkinson's, it was, what's the disease that you just have generic pain throughout your body? And
fibromyalgia?
Yes.
Fibromyalgia. That's
So
another
she
auto.
came into to this flotation business, and we decided to try. We wanted to see if multiple sessions of flotation could help alleviate her fibromyalgia pain. And she found that when she was in the tank, that her pain would go away, but shortly after she got out, it would resurface. And I find myself wondering, going back to the Bill Bankston concept, um, could you go into a flotation business and put healing energy into a tank and let people experience, and you wouldn't have an answer for this. I'm just throwing a concept out. Could we create a flotation tank that is combined with healing touch and see if we could help people who have things like fibromyalgia?
That's a great thought. That
Yeah.
really is, because that's a very common illness. And I've found that most of the autoimmune diseases that the people I've seen are under huge amounts of stress, a lot of warriors. They feel like once the pain starts, it's never going to stop, and it's changing their thinking. And I'm take a class at the end of this month called Life Force Healing, and it's working on the cells, every cell in the body, and regenerating it, and getting rid of the ones that don't need to be there and keeping the ones that do, and bringing healing ones in. So that's another concept that I'm working with, that hopefully I'll get the rest of the class done by the end of the month. But that's a great concept, if you could put the healing energy into the water.
Yeah, or even it's possible a flotation session would so completely relax somebody that after they come out of a flotation, do the healing touch, and that'd be interesting to see if the effectiveness of healing touch could be enhanced by preceding it with a flotation session.
That sounds great. And know when you calm the body and the mind, and I've been in one of those salt tanks, they're fabulous.
Yeah.
Your body relaxes, and it puts the body in a place to self-heal too. And that's probably why when she was in there, she didn't feel any pain. And then when she got back out to the real world, it was like, oh, got to, drive home, or got to go to the grocery store, I got to pick the kids up, or, she's stressed about. But that's a good part. That's a great idea. Never even thought that way.
Mm-hmm. Jackie, you've got your hand raised. Go
Yes,
ahead.
thank you. I two things. I have one comment and one question. The energy being infused into the water is great. I know they do that at the Casa in Brazil, Albajani. They create a blessed soup that they encourage their participants to eat, and they also bless bottles of water for them to bring home. So it is possible to infuse healing energy into liquids very easily. The other question that I had was, you mentioned using a laser. Are you talking about laser from your hands or a physical device?
No, laser. This is my laser. It's 2 fingers, sending the energy through both fingers, being very specific on the area that I want to do it in. So yeah, the only thing I use are my hands. That's it.
Good to know. Thank you.
Okay.
One of the things I like about these gatherings is there's so much knowledge that people bring to this, so many experiences, and we get down one track and somebody thinks, well, like Jackie, you're aware of, was this Brazilian? Did you go to Brazil yourself?
It's John of God.
John of God, yes.
Okay.
Casa in Brazil.
Yeah, well, we should maybe have a little conversation about having you talk about a John of God, your experience.
Oh, Mary Ellen Rodriguez is the person to do that. She's been there many times.
Yeah, all right. Oh, that's good. We ought to look into that. Before I go back to Bill, he's got his hand raised again. Let's see. Here's one from Jill. Can a person who does not believe in universal consciousness be worked on?
Yes. You don't have to believe in it for it to work. It helps, but you don't have to believe in it. All I ask someone, just come with an open heart and an open mind, and let what's going to happen happen. I said, I can't hurt you. Know that only concerned about your highest and best good. So you don't have to believe in a higher consciousness. As long as I do, that's all that matters to me. So, but they can receive the healing as well as anyone who does.
Joanna, you have a question. Instead of my reading it, do you want to pose it, or would you rather I read it back? You've got a personal experience. I guess you need to unmute yourself.
She said you can read it.
Well,
oh, hello.
There we are. Okay, Joanna, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I'm late. I am on vacation in Florida, and I didn't realize it was Central Time here. But so I am just popping in. Rita, my husband and I had sessions with you. Oh, how long ago was that?
Oh my gosh.
I don't know if you remember, 7, 8 years ago. We only each had one session, but I can highly recommend Rita's Healing Touch. But anyway, yeah, I just wanted to, since you were talking about fibromyalgia, I just wanted to tell you my experience with that. A combination of plant pycnogenals, and I don't know, like maybe which one was the magic bullet for me, but it helped my fibromyalgia. It basically cured it, and it also cured my psoriasis, and at the same time. So anyway, but relaxation, anything, the flotation tank sounds great. Also, massage helped me tremendously, but I think it was the pycnogenals that actually cured me. So anyway, I just thought I'd throw that in.
Yeah, no, that's good. Like I said, we all have these experiences that we can learn from.
Yeah.
I mentioned my hip pain. I'd had cortisone shots. I'd tried, I don't know, what was it called? Myofascial release.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up going down to Peru and participating in an ayahuasca healing retreat. And the practitioner down there, this is the theory behind it, is that they contact plant consciousness, and plant consciousness tells them what to prescribe to people. So I was prescribed something called chuchuwasi, and I drank 3 glasses a day for about a week, and I went to the bathroom quite often, but within a week's time, this pain had diminished significantly. I got back home and I looked it up, and it turns out it's just a bark of a tree that has a lot of anti-inflammatory compounds in it. But what was fascinating was that I'm in the middle of the Amazon jungle, and these people know how to call on plants and what to prescribe. We take a lot of pride in the advancement of our medical knowledge, but there's so much more, I think, than what the American doctor is taught in medical school. Bill Lenfesty's back with another, got his hand raised again. Bill, go ahead.
Yeah, before you get to my questions, Jim, did your pain come back, and can you still get some of the same compound?
It wasn't a cure. It was the underlying problem was that I, through all the sports and things I'd played through my life, the material that insulates your hip bone from the top of your leg, had worn away. Now, I suspect Nancy may be willing to comment on her experience, but I'll give her an opportunity to speak on that. But go ahead, Bill.
Okay, 2 questions. First of all, do you ever take people in for, I guess what I would say, like minor tune-ups? Because I can think of a lot of things that are kind of minor but are ongoing. And you say, okay, it's not real severe, but I can just kind of fix it because it's been going on for quite a while. And the second question was more, Jim, to your thing of putting energy in cotton. It seems like on the deepest level, that's what holy water, I would guess, is supposed to be at its best. Just that most people that do holy water probably don't have the energy, the ability to truly bless it. But I would think that if you could, that's what you're doing, is creating the same stuff that, Jim, you'd be talking about if you put energy into any kind of substance.
Yeah, we don't understand how this stuff works. And if it's really how much of it comes from within. Rita said to begin with, she's not doing healing. Somehow she's activating a capacity from within that does the healing. I think that's what you were saying, Rita. Is that right?
Yeah, mine comes from spirit, and it
Yeah.
comes from the angels. So it comes from the spiritual realm.
All right, Nancy is indicating she's willing to share her story about her hip.
She's on mute, I think.
Yeah, Nancy, can you unmute yourself? Let's see. Nancy, if you can hear me, I don't know if you can unmute yourself. If you
Can I answer one of the questions that Bill
This
brought
is-
up?
Am I there?
Yeah.
There you are.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, my hip was degenerating, and I'm a healer. I've studied many, many, many different ways of healing, and I thought, well, why not use it on myself? So I would sit and I would just visualize my bone, that the ball of the hip regenerating itself. And I did this for probably a year and a half. And, finally I got to the point where I said, well, you know what, I'm just tired of limping. So I just went ahead and I said, I'm going to get this surgery. So I had the surgery, which went beautifully. And when it was over, I asked the doctor if he had taken any x-rays of it. And he said, of course. I said, well, I'd like to see them. So he went out, he came back in. He said, this is the weirdest thing I've ever seen. He said, here's all these spokes of bone poking up almost as if it was trying to heal itself. I said, oh, really? I didn't say anything more to him, but I was like, well, all I needed to do was fill in the middle and smooth it out, and I would have had it.
So it makes the point that we have this capacity for healing. Daniel might be able to comment on this, but when you look at out-of-body experiencers, when you leave this physical realm, there's much more ability to influence the reality that you're in. And that's a whole other subject that we might talk about another time. It's hard in this dense physical world to, you have to repeatedly make the effort to change things. But once you get rid of this physical body, the ability to change things it becomes phenomenal. Jill, you had your hand raised. You want to, then I'll come to Daniel next.
Yeah, I have a question about how people that have this ability or gift from God, how they feel about the fact that they're charging a lot of money and making a lot of money as a business. When I feel like Jesus wouldn't charge. That's my question.
I'm not making a lot of money. I would have stayed in real estate if I wanted to continue to make a lot of money. This is definitely not a huge amount of money in energy healing. But money is an energy exchange, just like anything else, whether you go to the massage therapist, you go to get your nails done, your hair done, you go to any other kind of physician. I don't charge a lot. I'm way below what everybody else charges, really sometimes below a massage therapist. So, God is working through me, but it's just part of life. I've got an office, I'm not on the street doing it like Jesus did it. I've got to have a facility and a place and a safe place for people.
It was just a question.
Yeah. When I went into business, I said, God, if you can just give me enough money to pay my rent, I'll be happy. I didn't ask, I should have asked for more, but I'm able to make the rent and I'm able to provide a service. But I give back. I do a lot of volunteer in the community, at hospitals, cancer support groups. So it's not like I'm just taking, I'm also giving back the gift that I have.
Also, are you in contact a lot with the Reiki community? Because I had an experience with a Reiki master. Maybe you might have heard, her name is Ifatayo. No?
I don't know a lot of people in the Reiki community. We've invited them into our Healing Touch chapter because our goal was for all energy healers to be able to join, join with us. There's no fee. We just meet once a month. But, and Reiki is a great energy therapy. Don't get me wrong. It's just, it's different. Ours was more geared for the medical end of it because an RN developed it, where a Buddhist monk developed Reiki. So it comes from two different mindsets, but it does the same thing.
Right. I just wanted to mention my experience that I was in a Reiki circle, and this woman, Ifatayo, she came to me and she touched my eyes and she touched my abdomen. I had just recently had 3 eye surgeries, and I also have really bad IBS. And I was so shocked that I just sat down and started crying. It was just like amazing. How did she know? That was my biggest, it was amazing.
And I think healers are starting to find each other all over the country. And Jim, you said it, the internet has really brought all of us together. And I think it's going to be a huge community. And that's going to be part of why the hospitals are going to see the need to bring this in, because we're going to become more visible. Before I did it, I don't know what energy healers did, if they did it behind the scenes or they really didn't promote themselves or how it worked. I only know from the time that I started. So it's, and I know the medical professionals even look at it back then, when Reiki people were doing Reiki, but it's acceptable.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a friend that works with or volunteers with hospice doing Healing Touch, and Reiki practitioners do too.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Daniel, you got your hand raised? You have to unmute yourself.
Yeah. So this has been great, Rita. Thank you. I'm interested, what were the most significant things you learned? What were the things that surprised you or that stood out in all of your lessons?
In training?
Yeah.
One, that the mind and thoughts control the body. That people said, oh, it's hereditary, but all of our thoughts control what goes on in the body. The second, that everybody has the ability to do this, to do energy healing. That they don't have to have a degree, they don't have to be a nurse, as long as they come from heart-centered and set an intention, that can be done. And that it can help with so many ailments and pain and surgeries and coming out of anesthesia and just so many different things that it can help, where Western medicine is going to give you a pill. You'll get 5 minutes with the doctor or a PA, and they're going to write you a script. This is an alternative to help people heal the entire person. And I'm able to spend an hour and 15 minutes with my clients. A doctor has 5 minutes because he has to see 40 patients in a day. Yeah. So I'm able to talk with them to find out what the issues are ahead of time. And usually it's the emotional side, and then work on them and then sit down and talk with them. And coming from an RN's perspective, there's a form for everything we have to use to document. And I have to give each client, when they leave, self-care ideas of what they can do to take care of themselves. Because in the busy world we live today, nobody's doing that. I mean, if you have a career and you're working long hours and then you've got a house and kids and a spouse and all of that goes on, that no one is actually taking care of themselves. They'll say, well, I exercise 3 times a week. Well, do you do yoga? Do you do deep breathing? Do you do visualization? Exercise is great. It releases endorphins. And believe me, I'm not knocking that. it's just something, they need to do something personal for themselves. And I found that doing healing touch, most of the people, I'd say the majority, are not doing any kind of self-care. A lot of them are fed up with Western medicine because they don't want to take another pill. They said, I went to the doctor and he wrote me 2 more prescriptions. And they said, I want to try something different, and they're looking at energy medicine. They don't mind paying for someone who's going to spend an hour with them and evaluate them and listen to them and then do a technique. Those are the biggies, and that the medical profession isn't open to it like the cancer doctors. So that kind of surprised me, but it's changing. It's definitely changing.
Yeah. And if I may, there should be no guilt about charging. Okay.
I don't
As you
have.
pointed out, it's an energy exchange. It's an energy exchange, and it gives people an opportunity to return the favor, so to speak. It's weird. We have a societal feeling that, certain things should be free, but then, suppose you went to the supermarket and said, well, food should be free. Yeah, it should, but it's not. So I know that those who are true healers don't do it for the money. So thank you for what you do.
I would guess that if you're getting into healing, if you do it only for the money, if that's your primary motivation, you probably aren't going to be very successful at it.
And you're not going to be a good healer.
Hmm.
That's not the intention that you really want to set when you start out on this path. Yeah. And I think someone has to want.
So I have another question. It's I'm sure it's tempting to the ego to feel like, ooh, look what I did. How do you keep the ego in check?
Before I start a session, I ask Jesus and Mother Mary, and this is that Catholic upbringing coming back again, and all the archangels. And I ask my grandmothers that have passed away and their spirit guides to be with me and to work through me. And when I get done, I thank each and every one of them. And that grounds me to say, it's not me. And I know it's not me. Am I thrilled when I see a huge response? Absolutely. But I know it doesn't come from me.
Right.
I believe all healing God.
Yeah, not only from God, but from the patient themselves.
Right.
Because if they don't allow it, then it doesn't happen, right?
Right.
And
they have to want it.
They have to want it. They have to allow it. They have to believe it's possible, because any of those things can block the energy.
And someone had asked about tune-ups, about having, and I have clients that come once a month after I've worked on them for me to just to balance them, because everyday life will take you out of balance somewhere, whether it's emotional or physical, and they come back just to be balanced again, and for me to check to make sure there's nothing congested. So those are I call them my repeat. I give them a deal. Pay for 2, get 3. It's one of those, if you're going to come back, I'm going to reward you. And as long as they see the benefit, I will always be there for them.
Yeah.
Mike, you've got your hand raised. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. First, I want to thank Rita for doing this, talking to us all about this. It opens our minds to this and the possibilities of healing. I'm a healer myself. I've been doing it professionally for about 14 years now. Been doing it from about the age of 10, actually, and just really enjoy it. One of the things she touched on a couple times was about people receiving the healing and then not healing. What I've come across is some people are afraid of healing, and they're afraid of being something other than what they are at that time. And like, for instance, a gentleman walking with a cane gets attention, gets doors open for him, and gets other things that wouldn't happen anymore if he didn't have to walk with a cane. I had one gentleman that had really bad knees, and I would work on him, and he would just be amazed after he got off the table how it didn't hurt anymore. But as soon as he got out to the car, he said, it's probably going to come back. And I said, it probably is, because you're looking for it. And when you look for it, it will come back, because that's where your thoughts are going. And it's a drawing. I mean, it's something. Healing is something that you commit to. You're asked to, so to speak, to do this work. I see myself as a conduit, like a tube, and the cleaner and more polished the inside of the tube is, the better that energy flows through it. And so I work very hard to keep that tube clean. And that's how I see how it flows through. And doing self-healing, self-work, self-forgiveness work helps to keep that tube clean. So, but thank you, Rita, and thank you, Jim. And also thank you, Mark.
So I'll share, we're getting into an arena here that I think is worth exploring a little bit, and I won't spend a lot of time on it. There was a renowned healer in Western North Carolina named Vaughn Boone. And Vaughn he wrote a book on his work called Angels at Work. And I've probably shared this story with some, so I'll try to keep it condensed. He did healing. He would call on etheric surgeons to do their work. And this gentleman who was dependent upon his wife for his care, he was in a wheelchair, and his wife would have to dress him and put him in the bathroom, and it was a dependency relationship. And he came to Vaughn and asked if he could get a healing. He didn't want to be as dependent upon her. So Vaughn said, sure. He went through his healing. He always began his work by praying for only the highest and best good. And he said, I don't know what the highest and best good is. I just pray for that. Mm-hmm. And this gentleman had a temporary healing, but then it came back. And I asked Vaughn, what do you make of this? And he said, we come into these lives, he doesn't know for certain, but we come into these lives sometimes to experience things that from a pure human perspective, you'd say, why would you ever want to do that? But when you look at it from a spiritual perspective, maybe this husband and wife came in and wanted to experience this dependency relationship for spiritual growth. And that's why the healing didn't take, it was not in his highest and best good.
It's karmic. It's definitely karmic.
Yeah. I thought somebody else had their hand raised. I saw Bill, but in any event, we have an event coming up this Friday, Kathy McDaniel.
Yes, that's right. Do you want to talk about that, Jim?
I'm not overly prepared to talk about that.
Oh, okay. Go to the consciousness-cafe.com website and you can learn more. Another one coming up this Friday.
Friday at 7:30.
Yeah, 7:30.
Yeah. All right. Well, this has been a wonderful evening. Rita, thank you for sharing everything that you shared tonight. There are varying levels of knowledge about your subject matter. And I think everybody probably got something out of what you had to say tonight. So
thank you very much. It was a true pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity.